Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US politics special. I'm going to give you a rundown of some legal issues going on in the US concerning all sorts of things, but mainly focusing on ICE and immigration and Harvard. But there are some other issues we will talk about. And actually, we're going to start with the pardoning that's been taking place. And I did a whole video on the spurious pardons that are taking place that Trump is initiating. Donald Trump just pardoned former Representative Michael Grimm, a New York Republican who resigned from Congress after tax fraud conviction drained the swamp. Right. And I wanted to start here because there is this idea that there used to be an idea, I gather, that the GOP, the Republican Party, was the party of law and order. You know, the moral high ground that they would adopt would be, you know, this idea that security, domestic security, law and order, international security, these are all major components of republicanism and conservatism. But it seems like that is not the case anymore. It's like one rule for us, another rule for you guys. So we have rule-breaking, law-breaking representatives here, Republicans or other people, that the Trump administration appear to want to pardon because it's politically advantageous to do so. It's party politics above country, above law and order. So those pardons, I think, are a good indication of, I think, the moral fibre of the Trump administration. Now, Trump has now just floated the idea, or some days back, of pardoning P. Diddy, not because of the evidence, not because of the facts concerned with the case, but because, and I quote, "he used to really like me a lot." I'm not going to play you the video, but that's where we're at. We have a president that's so narcissistic that anyone who declares undying love for the dear leader will get preferential treatment. This is about loyalty. It's not about morality. It is about loyalty. It is not about law and order. So, you know, even with, he need know nothing about the ins and outs of the case in hand. It's just, does he like me? Then we'll pardon him. Okay. Now we're going to move on from there. It's just kind of not really a segue into the bill, but actually what am I talking about? The big beautiful bill, which is the reconciliation bill that has just been passed through the House of Representatives, the lower house. It's waiting to go through the Senate, and actually it has some legal additions to it. Not only is it going to whack up the deficit by trillions and trillions of dollars, but it has this. So Trump's big beautiful bill is the most dangerous legislation in US history. Here's why. So to those of you who don't know what's buried in this big bogus bill, prepare yourself for what's coming. And there have been some town halls where Republican congressmen have been, I saw one congressman who was approached, I can't remember who it was, he was approached with a question in the audience about this, saying, did you know that it had this issue in it, the bill that you've just voted for? And he said, no, I didn't even know it was in there. Okay, and this is what happens when you pass a bill late at night, no one's read it, you're voting on it, pressured by your party whips, if you like, and you vote for something because you know you're supposed to vote for it, but you have actually no idea what's in a fine print. And what happens is quite often all sorts of things get smuggled into the fine print. And here we have some exceptionally dubious things smuggled into that budget reconciliation bill. Okay, if the Senate passes the one big beautiful bill and Trump signs it, that's it. It becomes law. And here's what that really means. He can delay or cancel elections legally. He can ignore Supreme Court rulings for a year or more. He can fire government workers for political disloyalty. Judges can't enforce their own orders. Protests can be tracked and criminalized. LGBTQ plus rights, education, healthcare, and media gutted. Your VPN tracked, your vote suppressed, your speech flagged. The bill doesn't break the law. It rewrites the law so Trump never has to break it again. We don't need to wonder what would happen if authoritarianism came to America. It's here in 1,100 pages, dressed up as freedom. If you've ever said it won't be that bad or the courts will stop stop him, just know the bill makes it so they can't. So you need to speak up is the idea. So Pam Bondi has just told the American Bar Association it will no longer have access to vet judicial candidates. I assume this means the Trump administration is about to nominate some true stinkers, says Tira Atz here, as judges, and is trying to limit the fallout. All these little things that are happening under the radar are chipping away at the legal norms, legal mores that are embedded in the American political processes and institutions. So here, the Bar Association will no longer have access to vet judicial candidates. They can just push through who they want. And talking about legal issues that are pretty dubious, here we have Ashley Babbitt. So if you remember, Ashley Babbitt was a woman who was killed in January the 6th. Now remember, a number of policemen were killed, injured, had all sorts of PTSD, were attacked. Yet it's Ashley Babbitt's estate has been given a settlement of $30 million by the Department of Justice in a wrongful death lawsuit. Hutch says this is absolutely insane, literally the most justified police shooting ever caught on camera, and your tax dollars are going to make her family generationally wealthy. It's insane. Now, you can argue with the details of her killing, but what is going on here is, as with the January the 6th insurrectionists, as I would call them, they were pardoned. All sorts of people are being pardoned, and here we have someone who was obviously very pro-Trump at the January the 6th insurrection rally to cause issues, broken into the Capitol and ended up dying, and really Trump's administration rushes to pay them out. Meanwhile, other people have not received payment. So not sure about you, but Ashley Babbitt's family getting $5 million. I don't know the exact details here. It's mentioned $30 million in a wrongful death payout, but here it says $5 million, while Brian Sicknick's family, along with 140 other police officers injured or who died defending the Capitol against domestic terrorists like Ashley, get nothing, and it makes me sick. So there are some real double standards at play there. Now, breaking news, the Trump's, well, this is some days back now, goodness, it's about 2 weeks ago now. I'm a little bit behind on this video. Trump's DOJ opened an investigation into the New York Attorney General Letitia James, who won a fraud case against Donald Trump. Hours later, James hosted a town hall with other AGs to hear from people about the impacts of the Trump administration. At the end, this has happened. Now, I'm not going to play it to you because otherwise it'll go on too long, but I'll play you how righteous she gets. Actually, I will play you the end of this because Letitia James does get righteous. Here we have very probably a bit of retribution that is being enacted by the Trump administration, which is incredibly typical of Donald Trump himself and his administration. I think that's why Kash Patel, Don Bongino are in the positions they are in.
25. We analyzed jurisdiction. We analyzed claims. We analyzed standing. We distributed all of the subject matter to each respective states. We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side, and the one institution that has stood by our side is the courts. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
So powerful stuff there, but this is the reliance on the courts to fight back against Trump and the administration, and I think that is the last bulwark of I guess certainly judicial normality, but I think political normality, as this kind of populism is taking the American government to the extremes. And I think things are happening under the radar that are being fought in the courts of law, but they aren't being fought in Congress because the Democrats have no power. There is not much they can do, but they're also not doing a lot as well. So one of the big issues that it keeps on being talked about is this, that habeas corpus is potentially going to be looked at and repealed. It is functionally not existent at the moment, I have to say. What is habeas corpus? So habeas corpus is the legal procedure that allows individuals to challenge the legality of their detention or imprisonment. The term, which translates from Latin as "you should have the body," enables a person to petition a court to order their custodian to bring them before the court to determine if their detention is lawful. This principle serves as a safeguard against unlawful confinement and is a fundamental aspect of individual rights in many legal systems. In other words, if you don't have habeas corpus, you can be taken off the streets, told that you are a criminal, and incarcerated for breaking the law without being able to defend yourself. And of course, that allows complete authoritarian abuse of power. Without habeas corpus, you are opening the door to dictatorship and disappearing people. I mean, it is an absolute fundamental principle, your right to defend yourself legally, in any certainly free and democratic nation. And the United States has that written into its constitution. The US Constitution specifically includes a habeas procedure in the suspension clause. I mean, after all, the United States inherited habeas corpus from English common law. But yes, it's in the suspension clause 2, located in Article 1, Section 9, the procedure is included. This states that, quote, "the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it." It has been a number of times. So Lincoln and Grant suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War and Reconstruction for some places or types of causes. So during World War II, President Roosevelt suspended habeas corpus following the September 11th attacks. George Bush attempted to place Guantanamo Bay detainees outside the jurisdiction of habeas corpus, but the Supreme Court ruled against it. So it has been done a few times. In trying to do it now, because the US is being invaded by Venezuelan drug gangs or whatever it is just disingenuous. Like, there isn't an invasion, there isn't a civil war going on. To get rid of habeas corpus is something you would do if you just want to disappear brown-skinned people off the streets or something like that. But of course, you know, fascist Stephen Miller is the guy who's proposing this, unsurprisingly.
That happens, do you think?
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the
do the right thing means do what we want them to do. So looking at suspending it because there's some kind of emergency, it's incredibly dangerous.
Hold on, there's a question back there first.
I have two quick questions. First, President Trump has talked about potentially suspending habeas corpus to take care of the illegal immigration problem. When could we see that happen, do you think?
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day, Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration and Nationality Act, which stripped Article 3 courts, that's the judicial branch, of jurisdiction over immigration cases. So Congress actually passed, it's called jurisdiction stripping legislation. It passed a number of laws that say that the Article 3 courts aren't even allowed to be involved in immigration cases. Many of you probably don't know this. I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the term temporary protected status, or TPS, right? So by statute, the courts are stripped of jurisdiction from overruling a presidential determination or a secretarial determination on TPS when the Secretary of Homeland Security makes that determination. So when Secretary Noem terminated TPS for the illegals that Biden flew into the country, when courts stepped in, they were violating explicit language that Congress had enacted, saying they have no jurisdiction. So it's not just the courts aren't just at war with the executive branch, the courts are at war, these radical rogue judges, with the legislative branch as well, too. So all of that will inform the choices the president ultimately makes, yes.
Mr. Miller.
What we have there, and sorry, there's a bit of repetition from the previous tab. What we have there is this idea that the Trump administration is pitted against the courts, particularly the lower courts, to try and get this situation where habeas corpus can be tested as a principle and where the courts can be overridden. Now, typically, he's not exactly correct in his claims, Stephen Miller. I won't go into the finer details here. The Immigration and Nationality Act stripped Article 3 courts. That's a judicial branch of jurisdiction over immigration cases. PolitiFact checks this. Stephen Miller said courts can't rule on Trump's immigration actions. Legal experts say he's wrong. So we'll just look at these, the kind of TLDR of this. The Immigration and Nationality Act lays out the process by which immigrants can appeal decisions in their immigration cases and when federal courts can get involved. Federal courts have limited jurisdiction over immigration cases, which are generally handled by immigration courts under the Justice Department, not the judiciary branch. The Immigration and Nationality Act did not strip federal courts of their function to rule on the constitutionality of a president's immigration actions. And you can go see all the sources for those claims. What Stephen Miller does very well is he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And he sounds very knowledgeable on these different claims. But arguably, he is not. And he is kind of fooling you with technical language and what he thinks is the case. Now, it's worth knowing that Adolf Hitler effectively eliminated habeas corpus in Germany shortly before becoming chancellor in 1933. A bit of an analogue there that could be a warning. Stephen Miller says habeas corpus can be suspended because we're facing an invasion, but he also says the border crossings are down 95%. So this is a really interesting double standard or contradiction, which is, this is an invasion, it's all terrible, but look how amazing we are because the Trump administration has reduced border crossings by 95%. Okay, so we're not really suffering from an invasion. In fact, things are improving, right? I mean, that's what you're telling us. So Trump says border crossings are the lowest ever recorded. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Right. Now, we're going to look into what's going on with regard to whisking people off the streets and incarcerating them without due process. Malcontent News here says, I've covered enough police activity over the years, so many questions, none of the gear or insignia in this video. So it is one of many videos we have seen of people getting detained, people being hassled by supposedly federal agents, ICE agents wearing balaclavas and police patches and whatnot on their tactical gear, but many people saying that these aren't actually federal agents. They just simply aren't, and they're militia members who have been pulled in, and in fact there have been a number who have been identified as such, and this is the federal government using thugs, armed thugs, to do their work, apparently, supposedly, allegedly. So Malcontent News says none of the gear or insignia matches. Some of the tactical gear is literally threadbare. Some officers have multiple badges. Different types of tactical gear and equipment are attached to their plate carriers in ways and places no one with even a weekend course of training would configure. Inconsistent gear between officers. Even private security would have more consistent issued equipment and its required setup. No one in law enforcement is going to mount a taser on the center of their plate carrier. No one. Almost all of them have their equipment mounted on the front of their carrier. No one with even a shred of training does this. How are you going to lie flat or crawl on your belly with all that gear between you and the ground? No organized response by law enforcement. Multiple police 101 violations that, if they were dealing with a real threat, would have gotten people killed. If they look like a goon squad, if they're armed like a goon squad, if they act like a goon squad, ... well, then they are a goon squad. These are not officials. And how has the United States of America got to a point where they are using armed thugs to do federal detainment? It is absolutely incredible. 7 ICE agents swarm a suburban house for a wellness check. There's an 8-minute video here that's worth watching. Interrogate her not just about immigration, but her sex life, and if she was free to go outside. She refused to leave the house with them. Quote, they're using so-called wellness checks as subterfuge, explained a law professor. Ashby Beasley is a gun safety activist from Highland Park, Illinois. While she was videotaping, the agents told her she was impeding and that she had her second warning, but she maintains that she wasn't interfering. I was very careful to stay in my car, to stay out the way, to not get between them, she said. So you can, there are so many of these videos going around where you're like, that is not an ICE agent, right? This person is clearly not an ICE agent. What are they doing? Going to these houses, doing, scare quotes, wellness checks, trying to get people out and then whisking them away. It is absolutely terrible what is going on in so many places in the United States at the moment. ICE has signed over 500 agreements with 38 states deputizing everyday citizens to be ICE agents. These people could be anyone. Most of us already know who they are already. So that's absolutely incredible. And, there's another video here detailing this. They're not going to be trained. They're not going to be, as we saw previously, necessarily having the correct equipment. This is dangerous. And who are these people? Where's the accountability? How can you track what these people are doing to you? Have they got body cams? Are those incidents being recorded as they are with proper policemen? This is absolutely unacceptable. It's not becoming a police state, the United States. It's becoming a thug state. A 12-year-old boy was abandoned on a sidewalk after ICE agents in Waltham, Massachusetts, arrested the adult he was with. They drove off and left him there like garbage. Waltham councillor Colleen Bradley MacArthur witnessed it and tried to intervene. Instead of responding, ICE agents filmed the volunteers helping the boy and drove onto the sidewalk to intimidate her. They refused to identify themselves, ignored legal observers, and broke every norm of decency. The child got home safely only because brave volunteers stepped in. This isn't enforcement, it's cruelty. Plain and simple, it's what authoritarianism looks like. Just absolutely incredible.
And taking pictures of us.
You said at one point a car drove at you?
Yes, I was standing on the sidewalk over in the corner. I could tell what he was doing. He was trying to intimidate me with his car.
When that agent got out of his vehicle, she asked,
"Which agency are you with? You need to tell me. It's the law. You're supposed to tell me who you're with." He didn't answer and then turned around and shouted,
"You need to stand back and not interfere."
"I'm not interfering. I'm observing, and legally I am allowed to."
She says by law, federal agents must identify who they are with, and by state law, local law enforcement cannot assist. She reached out to Waltham police after seeing officers at another ICE incident days later.
They've assured me that they're not taking part.
We reached out to Waltham police but have not heard back. A similar incident in Worcester last week sparked outrage in the community when Worcester police were on scene when 2 people were arrested for interfering with an ICE arrest. In the future, Bradley MacArthur would like to bring volunteers and local law enforcement together for a discussion on how best to handle safety at these situations.
But absolutely incredible that they could take someone and leave a 12-year-old behind. It's just, where is the humanity? Where's the compassion? Where's the actual procedure? It just seems incredible. And then we keep hearing stories about this. I heard another one today. ICE deports the wrong immigrant just 28 minutes after the judge ordered them not to. Trump DOJ admits, so the Department of Justice admits to wrongly deporting yet another man to El Salvador, making it the 4th known wrongful sending of someone to El Salvador. They are blaming it on a, quote, a confluence of administrative errors and inadvertent administrative oversights. Cock up, you can translate that as. A federal appeals court ordered the government to keep Jordan Melga Salmaron in the country. Despite their assurances, less than half an hour later, he was on a plane to a supermax prison in El Salvador. In other words, the courts are making these judgments and ICE are ignoring them. The law of the land is being broken on a consistent basis. Here we have a situation, there's so many of these videos. ICE threatens a Massachusetts citizen she was legally filming, part of a mass panic spread across Plymouth, all because ICE refused to notify local police of their raid. Quote, masked individuals with guns were taking away their neighbours without having any idea if they were federal law enforcement and not criminals. So, how do you? This is just going to give permission. This is an opportunity for criminal gangs to be able to take people off the road by dressing themselves up with balaclavas and tactical gear, and then they can just disappear people and no one can do anything because, oh, that's just ICE doing their normal stuff. These people don't have to, well, they do, they should, but they're not telling people who they are, and they could be anyone. And indeed, I think they are anyone. I think they are militia. So masked individuals with guns are taking away their neighbours without any idea, or if they having any idea if they are law enforcement and not criminals. The Plymouth Select Board Chair Kevin Canty said, "This is unacceptable behaviour that puts all law enforcement personnel and residents at risk. ICE should be ashamed of themselves." But it goes on. Here we have a claim that, and again, this is going to the point where this person is potentially just a... so the idea is that there are white supremacist militias that are being used to... Because these are the people who really want to get rid of illegal immigrants, or basically anyone with brown skin and black skin, I guess. So you're more likely to want to get rid of them if you are a white supremacist. So there are these theories that many white supremacist groups, and indeed there have been a couple of identifications of them, that are involved in these militias that are now supposed ICE agents. Now here, this isn't like, absolutely watertight, because that is a Norse tattoo. It's a Norse symbol that he has tattooed on his arm, but that is a Norse tattoo that has been co-opted by white supremacists. So the probability that this guy is a white supremacist with that sign on his elbow or near his elbow is very high. Look at the tattoo of this alleged ICE agent on his arm. If you don't already know what it means, look it up. They're exactly who we've been saying they were. This is why they are being so aggressive. Now, it's not 100%, but the probability is that guy is a white supremacist. In case you missed it, federal agents cuffed Representative Jerry Nadler. So we've got a Democratic lawmaker having his aide arrested by agents. Federal agents arrested Jerry Nadler's aide inside congressional office, claiming they were conducting a security check. The guardrails are off, is the Tennessee Holler's claim here, and this is coming from Politico.
She did not. That is not what happened.
That is not what happened.
Okay?
What?
Hold on a second.
Give me your contact information right
No,
now.
I'm going to give you some speak to you.
Hey.
That's what I'm going to
Speak to
do.
you after. We got you.
No.
We got you.
You're
okay.
I don't have to go.
You're okay. You're okay. You're going to be okay.
I'm a federal officer. We're here checking on something. We have the right to check. I'm giving you...
He has the right to check. He doesn't have the right to stop her from moving. Like, she is not under... Like, there's all sorts of dodgy stuff going on here.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting. You harboring rioters in the office. So there's not a problem. Let's walk inside. Let's walk through.
For what?
Let me see what's in here. Let's go. Come on. Hold it there.
I just don't know what's going on over there at the moment. Reuters reports that the Trump administration today ordered the FBI to devote a third of its work to immigration enforcement and must deprioritize all white-collar crime as a result. Who knew? So the richest people get to avoid any fear of arrest while the FBI rounds up migrant workers. And here's the issue. The idea was that these were supposed to be the kind of worst criminals. We're going to round up the worst criminals. And it turns out they are rounding up actual workers now. Low wage workers trying to actually, contribute to society by working. Unbelievable. We'll come to that in a second. We'll return to that idea. So they've now been set this goal of rounding up 3,000, arresting 3,000 people every day.
So you and Kristi Noem are pushing for 3,000 a day, but you're also going to fortify ICE. And the one big beautiful bill, my understanding is with at least $147 billion more for them to accomplish that goal. Explain.
Yes. Well, under President Trump's leadership, we are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day, and President Trump is going to keep pushing to get that number up higher each and every single day so we can get all of the Biden illegals that were flooded into our country for 4 years out of our country. And we can't.
So it's a very officious, target-driven approach. But unfortunately, it is, at the moment at least, very much centering on, well, including taking people away who are trying to abide by the law. This is one of the most disgusting videos of the ICE detention I've seen yet, says Susie Rizzio. A whole family showing up for their immigration appointment. And this is what happens. They even zip-tied the kids. I hope you feel good about yourselves when you go to church on Sunday, since God is watching. Ouch. Now, it is incredible. You have an ICE agent with his arm around this young lad who has been zip-tied. Just some young lad who's turned up because they're trying to follow the law by going to the immigration office, and these are the criminals, right? That you're after. We want to get rid of these people, these law break. Just children and their family.
Zip ties at immigration court in San Antonio today. So take a look. These are elementary school age children, maybe a teenager here, in zip ties while his mom is being bent over and arrested because they all went to court today. Look at these kids, they are clean, pressed and dressed, ready to go to court because their mom is trying to do the right thing by going to court when she's supposed to, bringing all of her kids because they're not allowed to miss court either. And they were zip tied. Look at this officer holding on to this kid's hand, his little arm over here. This is what your tax dollars are paying for. This is infuriating. I have kids who are...
And it's increased tax dollars as well, because they want to hit $3,000 a day. They're spending all sorts of money, I presume, on militias to go and do this dirty work for them by not following procedures and just whisking people off the streets. As Aaron Reichlin-Melnick says, what infuriates me so much about this operation is literally punishing people for following the rules and showing up to their court hearings. It is so toxic to the basic concept of following the rules. ICE is itself effectively encouraging people to violate the law. That's what this is teaching you. If you're going to follow the law and go to court to try and make sure that you're doing the right thing to become a legal citizen, we will arrest you. Okay, so this is just going to send people underground. But now we're going to get to what's been going on at places of work. So you're thinking, oh, they're only arresting criminals, right? Like that nice family we've seen going to court, going to the immigration court. They're just arresting criminals, right? That wellness check on someone's house, trying to encourage them out of their house and then nab them. The New America, a man screams, "But I'm a US citizen," as he's tackled and dragged off to a detention facility in Foley in Alabama. Maybe Americans learning all the lessons that Eastern Europeans learned living under Russians will get them to value the freedoms Ukrainians die to keep every day, says Jay in Kiev. Ow. But here we go.
Hey, that's illegal. Man, sit down. No, fuck that, dude. And he's not even doing nothing wrong. It takes, what the fuck?
Again, all these people in different styles of kit running up and doing this. You're thinking these aren't all proper agents. There's undercover, I guess. They're wearing undercover clothes, but then covered in tactical gear, but it's all differing tactical gear. It all seems very dubious to me.
I hope he got his shit on me. Then I'm gonna get that man this shit.
So that person, although I cut it off shouting, I'm an American citizen. Now we have there's another construction site we're going to look at, but this is the owner of a construction site in Tallahassee in Florida, where all the immigrants were detained by ICE a few days ago. So they go into a construction site. So these lawbreakers are some of the worst. The worst of the worst. We get rid of them. No, they go into a construction site and round up all the people working there. Now, the crazy part is the owners of the construction company are the ones that allegedly called so they wouldn't have to pay them. I mean, I don't know where... I'm assuming this is true. Obviously, one needs to fact check this. But the idea is that you employ a bunch of illegal immigrants, then phone up ICE and say, it's payday. I don't want to pay them all. Can you come and arrest all of these people? And then you've got like a month of free labour, is what the claim is there. So if illegals are freeloaders, why does ICE need to go into workplaces? Here's another example. All of these people lined up, look at them. Not they're all being detained, but they're all being processed. And, it's just the idea that it's the most illegal ones they're going to go for. Yeah, right. No, well, that's long gone. So they are now, taking people from doing work. How is this going? I've talked to you before the election that actually, if they're going to come true on their immigration and deportation goals, then they are going to mess with the economy. I mean, Jake Bro did a video on this where he said, look, if you really want to deal with immigration, what you need to do is look at these employers and say, if you employ illegal immigrants, you will be found liable and you'll be incarcerated. That will stop illegal immigration because there'll be no demand for workforce. But if you put the onus on the employee the whole time, then the employer gets away with employing illegal immigrants with no formal comeback. It's easy to get away with it and you just get cheap labour. But if you are going to deport all of these people, then there'll be a massive labour hole, which means that the cost of labour goes up as, supply and demand come into effect, and it will have an inflationary effect at a time where he's trying to get inflation down. So here we have a Democrat representative letting us know what her experience have been.
Congresswoman Maxine Dexter, Oregon's 3rd here in Tacoma, Washington, where I just finished a tour of the ICE detention facility, a for-profit facility that you are paying for with your tax dollars, that is harboring the most heartbreaking stories within its walls. And we had to fight like hell to get to hear them today. Congresswoman Jayapal, Congresswoman Randall, and I all went. We had 2 privacy releases, so we were only able to speak to 2 people. Our staffs were not allowed into the facility. We have oversight duties, and we weren't allowed to talk to people. And it just makes you wonder, what are we being kept from? What are they hiding? And what we heard is that the stories that we were being told by the administrators was not the stories we were told by the people in custody. So we have lots of reasons for concern, lots of reasons to go back, and I hope that you will stay loud and make sure that it is clear that Americans aren't okay with the Constitution being turned on its head, human decency being turned back on, and human rights being thrown out the window.
So this is not about just allowing unfettered immigration, right? That's not what I think these lawmakers, what I would be asking for. It's just about following the law with compassion and humanity, but essentially following the law and the due processes and the Constitution. That's why it's there. So she said, I just conducted unannounced oversight of the Northwestern Detention Centre, which serves my district, and what I witnessed was devastating. One woman who has called this country home for 20 years was detained just days before her wedding to a US citizen. Another man, a legal permanent resident for 31 years, a proud member of the Machinists Union, and a father of 3 US citizen children, is also being held in detention. Trump is detaining our neighbours, co-workers and loved ones without guaranteed due process and no accountability. That's not American. That's authoritarianism. I will not back down from this fight, she says. Then we hear, and this has been not so much contested, but some are wondering how much Kristi Noem knows about this. It has definitely been touted. Trump administration is considering a TV show where immigrants compete for a prize of US citizenship, according to Sky News. It would see contestants compete in tasks across different states that include trivia and civic challenges. I wonder if we end up getting to the Hunger Games at some point, some kind of Running Man competition. Snopes has done an article about how much Kristi Noem knows about this. Did Kristi Noem support a reality TV show where immigrants compete for US citizenship? Here's what we know. And it's unsure how much she knows about this, but it is a thing. It is a rumoured TV show. Daily Mail's done a big article on it. There have been some denials of some of the Daily Mail claims, but it's just absolutely incredible what's going on. And Representative Jared Moskowitz, who's a Democrat, just exposed that Republicans are trying to sneak nearly $1 billion in bonuses to ICE agents into the spending bill. We heard about this earlier. We can't afford healthcare, but we're all funding Trump's unconstitutional mass deportation militia. Just absolutely incredible. Let's listen to him.
Know this, but you guys have $858 million, again, almost $1 billion, okay, of money to give out bonuses to people. And so listen, bonuses are great when people do good work, but $858 million sounds like a lot of money. That's like a $40,000 bonus to every employee in all of ICE. So well, how about $500 million? How about $500 million for bonuses? Okay. We can do this together. We can show the American people there's like a little bit of waste here, So I can help you capture, Mr. Chairman, $903 million. We can save $1 billion together, show the American people we're serious.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Of course I will.
You raise a profoundly serious point in your inimitable way, Mr. Moskowitz.
This is Jamie Raskin, who's another Democrat, and they're playing off each other to, although in a tongue-in-cheek way. You know, we're talking about Doge here. We're talking about saving all sorts of money, fraud and waste and abuse and blah, blah, blah. And here the Republicans are trying to get through $1 billion almost in what? In bonuses to ICE agents.
The bonuses, that is a huge bonus budget.
Yeah.
What does that work out? Have you done the math to see what that works out in terms of bonus per ICE employee?
$42,000 for every employee in a bonus, in addition to their salary.
A $42,000 bonus?
Yeah, $42,000. And I, because you and I sometimes are symbiotic, you're probably going to ask me, what is the average bonus for the American worker in this country?
Do you know what that is?
It's $2,500.
That's the average Christmas bonus is $2,500.
The average Christmas bonus, because Christmas is back, the average Christmas bonus is $2,500.
I love Moskowitz.
But they want to give $42,000. And what I would suggest in my amendment is instead of $42,000, they get $25,000. That sounds like a lot of money.
Well, it seems to me you've probably hit upon the one thing we really could effectuate a compromise on, although I don't know that we're going to be able to talk to them about it, but maybe they'll just vote for it.
I mean, listen, if no one there wants to talk, bring in Comer. He'll definitely talk to me.
That's a reference to James Comer. They have a thing. Okay, so, that one's not there. Is it there? Yes, good. So then we're going to move on to what else is going on with ICE. And I've talked to you at length about how Doge has been interested predominantly in scraping the data of American citizens and American administrative departments, governmental departments, and giving that data to, it appears, Peter Thiel of Palantir. And Palantir have been getting more and more in bed with the American government. Here we have a massive screen of Trump and JD Vance and Elon Musk and Mike Johnson there at some, I don't know, Super Bowl, some kind of game. It just took 6 weeks to go from ICE partnering with Palantir to track immigrants. We're going to look at that in a second, to the government partnering with Palantir to track all Americans, is the claim there. So Wired here reports that ICE is paying Palantir $30 million to build an immigration OS surveillance platform. In a document published Thursday, ICE explained a function that it expects Palantir to include in a prototype of a new program to give the agency near real-time data about people self-deporting. But essentially, there are claims that Palantir is just doing all sorts of work concerning everyone's data in the United States. Palantir employees told The Times that the company's engineers had been quietly discussing creating a digital ID for Americans that they had grown worried about placing such sensitive data in one place. Quote, current employees are discussing the implications of their work and raising questions internally, Linda Jia, a former Palantir engineer, said. Data that is collected for one reason should not be repurposed for other uses, she added. Combining all that data, even with the noblest of intentions, significantly increases the risk of misuse. In early May, 13 former Palantir employees, Shia being one of them, signed a letter condemning the company's breach of transparency, free speech, and rigorous debate on the impact of technology. Palantir are, even with regard to ICE and their shenanigans involving, shenanigans is far too nice a word, with their, I would say, illegal and authoritarian abuse of power concerning immigrants, Palantir is not far away. Donald Trump has just handed, says Ian Smith Sr., Palantir the contract to build the federal AI database, which will be the single most dangerous consolidation of power in modern American history. Palantir isn't a tech company, it's a surveillance machine born inside the CIA, funded through QTEL and run by Peter Thiel, a billionaire oligarch who openly brags about crushing right-wing populist movements in Europe with his software. That's not crushing their movements, that's supporting their movements, crushing left-wing, I think, movements. He's a tech authoritarian. And now he's here building the backbone of American AI. This is the same Peter Thiel who groomed the character of J.D. Vance, shapes national AI policy maker as an unelected power broker, pretends to be anti-woke while embedding Palantir across every global intelligence agency, and Trump, the guy who ran on Drain the Swamp, just handed him the keys. You're watching the merger of big tech, big government, and artificial intelligence branded as patriotism. They're not creating tools, they're building infrastructure for digital authoritarianism. Palantir has already been used for pre-crime arrests and pandemic lockdown enforcement, and now it's being given access to national databases under the flag of security. This isn't a Patriot Act 2.0, this is Revelation 13 in real time. He calls us all to receive a mark no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. A bit of a biblical quote there. You think the mark will look like a chip? It'll look like this. An AI assigning you a risk score, a predictive model determining your access to banking, travel, medicine, a tech priesthood deciding who's dangerous, and Trump is funding it. Palantir is a digital beast system. Thiel is the architect, and conservatives are sleepwalking into their own captivity, cheering as their anti-establishment hero turns the surveillance state into a machine learning monster. This isn't freedom, this is Babel in binary. So whether, and I presume this person is actually conservative by the sounds of it, if you are a conservative or a liberal, or certainly a small L liberal, this kind of tech overreach is incredibly scary, especially when it's done in line or in concert with the state. Incredible. And meanwhile, while getting rid of all these illegals and immigrants and, members of the construction industry and whatnot, 17 family members of the El Chapo notorious Cartel group and the leader enter the US in a deal with Trump administration, according to Mexico. And I'm not quite sure what's been going on here, but it sounds pretty incredible that a whole bunch of the very worst criminals have done a deal with Trump, a deal with the administration, and are walking into, these are the actual criminals who you're saying we need to get rid of immigrant criminals, and 17 of them are now walking into the United States freely. It's just absolutely incredible. But there you go. I forget, there was someone was saying, look, how come this is not top news? How come this is not headline news? Being shown all this stuff over here and talk of tariffs and this and that and all this crazy stuff going on. And meanwhile, insanity prevails. Now, looking at people from a different point of view and borders. Before you ask, I've checked this. Yes, I have, because I couldn't believe it either. If you are considering visiting the US, my advice is simply don't do it. I know if they checked my socials, I would be detained and deported. So we have more examples.
We need to talk about what just happened to this 25-year-old Aussie woman.
more examples of the police state in America taking hold.
About what just happened to this 25-year-old Aussie woman who flew to the U.S. to visit her husband. Like, this wasn't some random trip. Her husband is literally a U.S. Army lieutenant stationed in Hawaii. She's ex-police herself. She's been to the U.S. a bunch of times, and she was just coming for a short 3-week visit, okay? But the second that she landed in Honolulu, it turned into an absolute nightmare for her. At first, it started at customs when things seemed fine, but then an officer suddenly flipped out when her mom politely asked what was taking so long, and he went from chill to absolutely screaming at her across the airport, telling her to go stand at the back of the line. Then both women were taken aside, and that's when things started spiraling in a really big way, because they started grilling her about why she had too many clothes in her bag, and they accused her of planning to overstay her visa based on her luggage. She literally had a return flight already booked, but that didn't matter because they searched everything. They took her phone, they took her passcode, they interrogated her about her police work, and then they tried to connect her to gangs and cartels. Totally baseless. Her mom was let go eventually, but Nikki, yeah, they held her, and they made her write a statement about her travel plans, her jobs, and even details about her marriage. They had her sign something that said that she wasn't part of a cartel. They took her fingerprints, they took a DNA swab, and then they still denied her entry. And they told her that she would be deported, but not before spending the night in a U.S. federal prison. She begged to call her husband. They didn't let her, but they said that they would let him know. They didn't, and then it got even worse. They handcuffed her and marched her through the airport in public, then forced her to undergo a full cavity search and then stripped naked to change into prison clothes. One officer even told her, like, yo, you shouldn't be here. We're seeing this more and more, and it's super alarming. She also didn't get dinner. She didn't get to shower. She was forced to sleep in a cell next to a woman that was actually convicted of murder. And then another detainee said that she was forced to take a pregnancy test and was injected with something that she didn't even understand. Now, all the while, Nikki's mom and husband had no clue where she was, and it was a Hawaiian airline staff member who finally hinted that she was probably in federal custody. Next morning, she finally got a call from the Australian embassy and was flown home, still under guard, and escorted to the gate in front of everybody. She finally saw her mom at the airport gate and broke down. And yeah, her mom was totally in the dark about all of this. She says that it was pure trauma. She was treated like a criminal, even though officials admitted that she had done absolutely nothing wrong. And now she's vowing never to return to the U.S., which obviously is going to be unaliving her marriage. So now her husband is trying to resign from the U.S. military just to be with her. And get this, she's not the only one. This is happening all the time now, and we're not being told about it. We're only hearing random stories, but trust me, there's a lot of them, okay?
And I've already reported on a number of these to you before. And then it gets even crazier. It's like you cannot be seen not only to criticize America and have your social media posts looked over on your phone at the border, but now you're not allowed to criticize Israel either. And this is coming from Marco Rubio.
Under President Trump, the United States will stand with the Jewish people. We have implemented a vigorous new visa policy that will prevent foreign nationals from coming to the United States to foment hatred against our Jewish community. We are holding international organizations and nations accountable for rhetoric against Israel that resurfaces in the manifesto of monsters like Iran and Sarah's killer. But we do see an eventual light at the end of this long tunnel of suffering. One can imagine a Middle East in which the Abraham Accords eventually reign. So thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Essentially saying, yeah, if you're critical of Israel, you ain't getting a visa. There you go. So spending from foreign visitors in the US is poised to fall by $8.5 billion this year, according to Oxford Economics. And that will be, no doubt, as a result of people not traveling to the United States because of incidents like the aforementioned. But all sorts of legal issues are prevailing at the moment. You just watch as regulation gets stripped away, workers' rights get taken away, environmental legislation gets ripped out. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, plans to weaken the rule curbing forever chemicals in drinking water. So that's nice, isn't it? The EPA plans to rescind and reconsider limits on 4 different forever chemicals under a landmark drinking water standard implemented last year under Joe Biden, according to documents reviewed by the Washington Post. The limits were adopted to as part of Joe Biden's efforts to limit public exposure to PFAS, hazardous chemicals linked to a range of serious illnesses. So that's good. Good to see that the American government has people's health and security at the forefront. So there you go. Now, talking about international law, the ICC's chief prosecutor has lost access to his email and his bank accounts have been frozen. American staffers at the court have been told that if they travel to the US, they risk arrest. NGOs, non-governmental organizations, have stopped working with the ICC. The leader of one won't even reply to ICC emails. So this is because Trump has sanctioned the International Criminal Court over their decisions over, indeed, Israel. So Elliot Higgins from Bellingcat says, again, this isn't an issue of left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, but authoritarianism versus democracy. You have to decide what side you're on and fight. And don't think it can't happen here. The very nature of our democratic systems and the way they interact with the modern information systems we all exist in means democratic regression towards authoritarianism is inevitable without proactive interventions. Wow. And then we have the whole Ramaphosa thing. And I just wanted to I know I've done a whole video or two on that and the kind of lying in public. So, you know, why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners, but not for others? You know, because they're being killed and we don't want to see people be killed. It's a genocide that's taking place. Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white. Okay, so Elliot Higgins says the white genocide myth began as a far-right conspiracy, but has been gradually mainstreamed through right-wing media, populist rhetoric and selective focus on farm attacks, stripped of overt white nationalist framing, but still rooted in the same distorted narrative. What we're seeing is a process of disordered discourse, and I've done a whole segment on disordered discourse before, capturing institutions in real time, the process of which is shown below. Can you tell which stage we're in with the white genocide one? So the process he has is exposure, incentive alignment, narrative integration, behavioral capture and structural embedding. Now, that all sounds very complicated. I would really love to get Elliot Higgins on to interview him and to talk particularly about disordered discourse. When I did that segment, a few of you reached out and said, that makes so much sense. Thank you for doing that. So I might have to resurrect that topic again for another video. Right, we're going to go from sort of immigration and people coming in and out and ICE onto Harvard, right? And the whole fustercluck that's going on with Harvard. So you have the situation where the Trump administration is hell-bent on stopping anything to do with diversity, equity and inclusion. Heaven forfend that you could have equitable, inclusive employment habits and whatnot. So they are going after DEI massively. And what they did is go to universities and other educational institutions actually and say, right, you have, we don't want you to have DEI. We don't want you to hire people using the framework you're using. We don't want you to teach this. We don't want you to teach these people. So it's, you know, 3 aspects: what you teach, who does the teaching, and who you teach. We want to determine how that takes place. And Harvard and some others have said, no, you can't tell it. This is a free, you know, we are a private institution. No, we're not going to do that. We are going to determine our employment and teaching procedures and content. And then the US government said, well, we're not going to give you funding. So we used to fund all this research. We're not going to do that anymore. And then we're going to come after you. Then we're going to take you to court. And it's just escalated into the Trump administration versus Harvard. And it's pretty damned worrying. Right. Before we get there, though, let's just look at Kash Patel. So the FBI, Kash Patel has shut down the FBI's internal auditing office, which oversees compliance and surveillance laws. In light of his previous comments about coming after rivals and journalists, the red flags are flying high. So we are seeing the institutions, the departments in America that are trying to uphold the law, or indeed you could argue break the law, but they are ridding themselves of their own oversight, so it enables them to do that even more. And who are in the crosshairs? Well, we have journalists, rivals, political rivals, journalists, and we're now going to look at universities here as one of the big targets for, because they represent the liberal elite, right? So we're going to go after the universities, except they're arguably the driving force of economic growth going forward. Now, Trump declares war on Harvard. Foreign students are kicked out. Harvard has been, so not only did they say we're going to take funding away from you, but then we're going to stop student visas for your foreign students. So this is really picking on Harvard. Harvard has been banned from admitting foreign students, an unprecedented move in US history. The Trump administration struck back after the university refused to hand over data on students involved in pro-Palestinian protests. Earlier, Harvard lost $2.2 billion in federal grants over alleged anti-Semitism. Now all current international students have been ordered to either transfer or leave the country or face deportation. Trump administration has banned international students from enrolling to Harvard, and JD Vance told Europe that we're becoming authoritarian. So here's the headline: Trump administration said it is halting Harvard's ability to enroll international students. There's a major escalation in the administration's efforts to pressure the college to fall in line with President Trump's demands. Sinister and authoritarian Kristi Noem, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security Secretary, sent a letter to Harvard requesting, among other things, coursework for every international student and information on any student visa holder involved in misconduct or illegal activity. In other words, this is just becoming a 1984 Big Brother police state. It's just incredible that this is happening in broad daylight. It also expanded its request for records to include any videos of international students or on campus or off involved in protests. Just absolutely incredible. So you can't now, the ability to protest, that's your First Amendment right, freedom of speech, freedom to be able to be critical. Now the American government is saying you can't be critical. If you're critical of Israel, we won't give you a visa. If you have got a visa, we're going to rescind your visa. If you've been critical of Israel, you're not allowed to protest on behalf of Palestine. There's no freedom of speech. Now it doesn't matter what you believe about Israel-Palestine. That's irrelevant here. It can be about whether you like carrots or apples, right? It doesn't matter. You should have the ability, you should have the right to protest. If you take that away, then you have a completely compliant population who is unable to speak out against anything. And then also you get rid of habeas corpus. So if you remotely think they're going to speak out about something, you can just whisk them off and no one can do anything about it because they don't have a right to reply. They don't have a right to defend themselves. And then you have ICE, non-legal ICE entities going around whisking people off the streets, and you've got people at the border patting you down, doing stuff, not letting you in because, just incredible. And then we have this really incredible situation. So Trump was asked about this, about Harvard.
When could the administration resume the interviews for foreign students' visa? When do you think your administration could resume these interviews?
When are you going to resume interviews for foreign students?
On what?
For the foreign student visa. Yesterday there was...
for the French visa?
For the French too, but all the foreign students.
Oh, for the foreign visas? What are you referring to? Foreign visas?
He literally doesn't have a clue what she's talking about. Stuff is happening in the United States that the president has no idea about.
For what? Are you talking about for colleges? Okay, so you're off of Israel. Now you're talking about colleges, right?
Yes, no.
Okay. Well, we're going to see. Look, Harvard has been a disaster.
Okay. You're now talking about, I understand what you mean. Harvard. Yeah, it's been a disaster. My opinion is that most of what happens in the US government, you see this with the executive orders that are placed in front of Trump. He reads them or has them read to him because he's not a good reader. So he has them read to him, and remember, he doesn't take intelligence briefings. We just heard that was it Tulsi Gabbard is now playing around with the idea of delivering them in short video form, including images with him in there, because otherwise he doesn't take on intelligence briefings. So he's not clued up on anything that's happening. And with the executive orders, they're being read to him as they're passed to him, and he goes, "Oh, that's a good one, I like that," as if he's never heard these things before. Like he doesn't have the idea of what's going on in Harvard front and foremost in his mind. He's probably thinking golf, and he has to be prompted to understand what's going on with the foreign visas. Here we have Education Secretary Linda McMahon, famously knowledgeable on education by having lots of experience in wrestling. Education Secretary Linda McMahon: universities should continue to be able to do research as long as they're abiding by laws and in sync with what the Trump administration is trying to accomplish. This is authoritarianism.
And yet my tax dollars are going for about $9 billion right now. I understand a lot of that is for research, good research, by the way. And universities should continue to be able to do research as long as they're abiding by the laws and are in sync, I think, with the administration and what the administration is trying to accomplish, but primarily abiding by the laws. And when we looked at different...
But I don't want to concentrate on that stuff. I mean, abiding by the law. Primarily, as long as they abide by the... Well, yeah, of course. We expect all institutions to abide by the law. I mean, yes. So that's meaningless waffle, right? So the real meat of that is, okay, in sync with what the Trump administration is trying to accomplish. Right. That's what you want. You want these institutions to just do your bidding. Whenever you say they jump, they have to say how high.
Aspects of what Harvard was doing relative to anti-Semitism on its campuses, they were not enforcing Title VI the way it should be. And we had conversations with President Garber, and I expected that we would have more, but Harvard's answer was a lawsuit, so that's where we find ourselves, right now. But it is, I think the president is looking at this as, okay, how can we really make our point? And what are the things that Harvard and other universities are doing that we have to call attention to? And yet my tax...
Okay, so there's this big thing with Harvard, and they are losing people now. Harvard's one of the top schools in the world, top universities in the world, and the US in general is scaring away people from even coming to the border, let alone applying to be a student. You know that if you disagree with anything the US government does politically, then you could be found out and your visa rescinded. Well, if you've got a choice of going to Harvard or any other Ivy League school in the US, or going to, I don't know, Oxford, Cambridge, or top German or French universities, then you're going to be like, well, I'm Taiwanese, or whatever, I'm thinking I'm going to go to Oxford, actually, thank you very much. And these other universities are going to be loving it. And the US is going to be in trouble with their education. Here, some of Trump's damage is visible right away, but much of it, like gutting science funding, attacking universities and driving away tourists and foreign students, will haunt us for decades. This chart is just the beginning, says Republicans against Trump. So America is failing to attract new scientists. Webpage views from outside the US per PhD program by program country. The percentage change on a year earlier. So April 2025 to April 2024, just the people looking at PhD applications online has gone up in Australia, Switzerland, Italy, Netherlands, Germany, Britain, Spain, and Canada. It's gone down marginally in Canada, and it's gone down massively, almost 30% in the United States. So that is an interesting indication. So breaking news, State Department is now reviewing all visa holders associated with Harvard, not just students. So now the teaching faculty is being, it seems, hunted down by the Department of Justice. as this all says, I don't know who needs to hear this, but this is exactly what authoritarians do. And then we've got your man from the Lincoln Project here, Rick Wilson. That was it. I couldn't remember his name. Rick Wilson, the founder of the Lincoln Project, who is a former Republican, saying the impact on the American university system, and in fact giving you a private anecdote to back that up as well.
Look, I suspect that universities around the world are rubbing their hands together. America has benefited economically over the years from Chinese students who come here, become grad students, get green cards, get work visas, stay in America, and go to work for big tech firms, go to work for big financial firms. And look, George Washington said, investing in science and learning was one of the highest things a country could do.
Remember that Doge has stripped out funding for the National Institute of Health. All sorts of science research has been defunded.
They don't believe that. I get it. And they want to marginalize the Chinese students here and pretend that this is some sort of scandal that Chinese students come here to learn, when in fact it's been of an enormous net benefit to America over the years. And yes, the universities will all take a major hit, and it will hurt our economy in the long haul, and it will elevate the countries around the world in the shorter term. Those countries are going to experience the opposite of what happened in the 1960s, when there was a brain drain from the UK and from Europe to America. Economic conditions were so good here, and we were so welcoming that people wanted to come to America to study and learn and work. Now we've said, the door's closed, you're not welcome. And it's not going to increase the number of jobs that Americans have, and it's not going to increase the number of American students at Harvard. This isn't some sort of pick and choose, column A, column B option. This is just going to end up in a diminished academic status for this country, and a diminished business climate for this country, and other nations will absolutely benefit. You're going to see Chinese students go go to work on graduate degrees in the UK in particular, Germany in particular, and to a lesser degree France and Japan. They're all going to end up benefiting mightily from this absolutely enormous mistake.
Do you think that is going to create a brain drain in the U.S.?
Absolutely. I think we are already beginning to see it.
This is interesting.
My partner works in academia, and she is seeing some of the most talented folks in her field, in her hard science field. I don't want to go too far into it. In her hard science field, they're leaving. They're not even waiting to be deported or expelled. They're applying to and receiving fellowships and postdocs and things in other countries right now. And the work that would be done here, that requires brilliant minds to do, will be done elsewhere.
So we're seeing.
There you go. So, albeit an anecdote, there is evidence, and I showed you that chart as well, evidence to suggest that is already hurting the US in terms of a brain drain. Right, we're going to end off with this, which is Trump then had a massive rant about another court case that he's involved in. And he's actually said this in a number of places, both like verbally in these pressers that he gives, but also on True Social. As Ron Filipkowski says, I'm starting to think he might be mentally ill. In fact, it's a really interesting segment of the interview we just seen with Rick Wilson that talks about his language. So you compare Trump's language that he uses now with the language he used back in 2016, is just like almost two different people. The man is aging, and he starts talking about him probably having dementia or elements thereof. But anyway, I don't want to go down that route now. Just give the Pulitzer to the reporter who asked Trump the taco question, and end this drama. So Trump keeps talking about having this win with this Pulitzer court case. So breaking in a major win, all caps, in our powerful lawsuit against the Pulitzer Prize board regarding the illegal and defamatory award, scare quotes, of their once highly respected prize to fake malicious stories on Russia hoax by the failing New York Times and Washington Compost, the Florida Appellate Court viciously rejected the defendants' corrupt attempt to halt the case. They won a Pulitzer Prize for totally incorrect reporting about the Russia hoax. Now they admit it was a scam, never happened, and their reporting was totally wrong. In fact, the exact opposite of the truth. They'll have to give back their award. They were awarded for false reporting, and we can't let that happen in the United States of America because, of course, he's dead against lying, right? We are holding the fake news media responsible for their lies to the American people, so we can together make America great again. Now, he's saying that they've made this great, had this great court victory, but it's absolute nonsense. Trump hails a ruling allowing a case against the Pulitzer board to proceed. There's nothing other than a judge saying, yeah, you can have this court case. That's not a victory in the court case. It's just saying, yep, you can proceed with the cause. Trump, after he left office following his first term, sued the board in 2022 in connection with Pulitzers that had been awarded for stories about Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. And then he said in a Truth Social post on Wednesday, calling it a win for the powerful lawsuit. Lawyers for the board had asked the judge in January to pause consideration of the case until after Trump was no longer president, but they said, no, it can go on. So the idea was like, should we pause it until he's finished being president, or should we go through it now? And they said, no, you can go through it now. And then that's him going, yay! Absolutely. So, this article here from the New Republic, Trump just invented an outcome in his lawsuit against the Pulitzer board. The president is trying to overstep the judiciary in his quest to defang America's newsrooms. But in reality, a Florida court had simply allowed the case to progress rather than there being any other situation. Anyway, I just thought I'd leave you with that kind of legal process that's ongoing, but it's just a massive misrepresentation of what is actually going on in this case. And so it's Trump is all about lies all the time. But he's lying about the judicial situation in this case. And then we have just a litany, as hopefully you understand now, of legal malpractice going on, I think, throughout the United States at the moment, as the US carries on in its inexorable march towards authoritarianism. It is insanely scary when you start joining all of these dots, and this is just a mere soupçon of, no, it's too nice a word. It's just an absolute infinitesimal fraction of what is actually going on right now. But even this has lasted way too long. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for indulging me. But just stay alert, stay woke, one might say, be awake to what is happening in the United States, politically and legally and informationally. It is a deeply worrying time. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.